Conservative media is trash. Most of it's clickbait garbage. That's based on no factual information. I did a story, of course, earlier today that talked about how the Daily Mail decided that it would lie about Joe Biden's climate proposals, and now conservative media is on fire about like a meat ban. Real weird stuff. But that's not just me saying that conservative media is trash and full of lies, even though, again, I just did. And I say it often. But no, it is actually coming from people who worked there, ex-employees, ex-conservatives who took a look at what they're putting out in conservative YouTube spaces and media channels, and they're saying, "Wow, this is a bunch of lies." In fact, last week I also talked about how producers who had worked for One American News Network were appalled at some of the fringe stories they were made to do. Now, for clarity, I don't care if somebody has a conservative ideology and they approach stories from a conservative, give a conservative point of view to certain stories. That's fine. I do stories from a progressive point of view. So I understand. It's totally fine having a point of view. The thing that's not fine is when you start lying about what reality is. And so this is what had been happening on the right wing. Now, a former One American News Network and InfoWars employee named Kalen Robertson recently went further. He went on CNN to talk with the host of Reliable Sources. Normally it's Stelter, but it was somebody else that was hosting. And I believe it's somebody, Avalon. I can't think of the first name now. But Kalen Robinson, or Robertson, sorry, went on to discuss about how conservative media is not about discussing news or talking about information or even giving a conservative perspective. No, it's basically all about how can we scare our audience into buying our stuff. Take a look.
I ended up becoming a correspondent for Rebel Media, of which I obtained millions of views. And my boss always told me, and the bosses of these other organizations always told me, that we should never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And if we can get people angry, and if we can get people upset, then we can make more money, we can make more profit, and we can drive the algorithms to keep pushing these videos. It was completely devoid of any realism or any journalism. We would go to quote unquote no-go zones in 2018 when Fox News would hype up that whole situation, and we would create conflict and then selectively edit it to look like those areas were far more dangerous than they were. Those videos would obtain millions and millions of views. Again, I regret that massively. The only reason I did it was because I was radicalized by those people and felt like it was for the greater good, and it was a bit of a cult, but those people profited massively from it, and it was always about pushing disinformation. Alex Jones, who I spent a lot of intimate time with, and a lot of the people that employed me, told me openly that they thought the whole Pizzagate stuff and the pedophile stuff and all the stuff that they were pushing is something that they don't really care about or really believe in. But it whips up their audience into anger, and it gets them to buy products on their news nights.
Wow. There's a lot that you can get from that. And you know what? Good for this guy for coming out and saying, hey, man, I was radicalized into this. I believed in this stuff. And turns out the people that were spreading this disinformation that sucked me into the alt-right pipeline, they don't actually believe it. It's all about money. It's always been about money. And so, yes, of course it's about money. Everybody right now, understanding the audience, is like, yeah, no shit. Yeah, of course it's about money. Duh. You think Alex Jones actually cares about the news? Oh, no, of course not. No. Does he really care about the deep state globalists that are taking over and turning the proxy? No, of course not. No, it's about getting paid. Yeah, we know that. And the thing about Alex Jones that makes him dangerous is not just what he says, which again is dangerous, but it's the fact that he has natural charisma. He is a natural entertainer, man. He says batshit things, but he does so incredibly well. He's fun to watch. Now that's again, despite him admitting that he is playing a character, it's almost no different than Stephen Colbert, right? And I know people like freak out when I make that comparison, but Stephen Colbert used to play a character, a crazy right winger, but he played it incredibly well. Alex Jones has taken that caricature to an extreme and is playing this character. That said, unlike Stephen Colbert, Alex Jones is also a piece of shit in real life. In fact, he recently buzzed his ex-wife's house in a helicopter. That's insane. But again, this first and foremost, Alex Jones is about making money. OAN, as I reported on last week, they're also there to make money. And so some of the stories that they were pushing were because of the CEO, Dennis Herring. So they called this H stories, right? H stories were basically stories that were pushed by the CEO from the top that did not involve any sort of factual sourcing. So the source material at one point in one story, for example, that they were talking about literally led to a right-wing chat room. And that's it. But the thing is, these stories are designed to whip up their viewers into a frenzy. And so that they will basically, their brain will stop working and that they'll tune in for more. Like, oh my God, what did the deep state socialists saying Dad trying to do this time? Oh, they're trying to prevent us from eating a hamburger. Oh my God. Oh, get your hands off my meat. I gotta have my meat.
Tighten up my meat.
It's weird. It's super weird. But it works. It works incredibly well. Now, for me, a good rule of thumb for media is that if somebody tells you that they're right 100% of the time and that they're the only truth teller out there, then you should, not believe them. You should probably go somewhere else because you're not going to get factual information. They're out to milk you for cash. I've never said that I am 100% right about everything. No, you know what? I do. Yes, I do my best to try to lay the facts out there and to give you my perspective. Absolutely. I try to give you the facts as I know them. That doesn't mean I'm 100% right. Do your research. Correct me if I'm wrong. And a lot of you do. And I do appreciate that. I love it. Because what I want to do is I want to try to give you, again, the facts as I know them and to give you my perspective. It's about perspective. Okay. And so that's what's different here. I'm never going to tell you, no, I'm 100% right. And if you don't listen to me, you're listening to the sheep. You don't want to be sheep, do you? Tune in. No, it's ridiculous. I'm a believer in progressive policy. Okay. I want Medicare for all. I want a clean environment. I want higher wages. I want things that make sense. And so I've aligned with people that also did the same thing, that also want the same thing. Okay. And my story is a lot like Robertson's story, except that I didn't get sucked down a pipeline, right? I was a viewer of TYT for, a couple of years. And I believed in the progressive policies. I believed in the message. And I was like, you know what? I want to get into this. I also want to talk about these issues. I want to help bring people over to the left, and to see that these policies are worth fighting for, that they're going to help more people. Okay. And for me, my experience with the Young Turks is that, they also believe in that message. And I've never been told, like, for example, by Jank, don't disagree with Jank or Anna, that's bad. No, I can disagree all the time. I've never felt like any of them have been dishonest or have been trying to control any message coming out of the show. No, complete creative freedom. If I want to disagree with Jank on the network, I'll just be like, you want to debate? And I've seen the Kyle Kalinske versus Cenk Uygur debates about Russiagate. And so that is something that no other network seems to have. You can disagree on these things. And I'm using me as an example because I went from a viewer to a worker. Robertson did the same thing. He went from a viewer of conservative media, of Alex Jones and, InfoWars and OANN, to working there. And then suddenly they're telling them, well, it's not actually about the stuff that we believe. No, it's just about it's about making money. It's about whipping people up. We don't actually believe in this stuff. Come on, we're milking some money here. We're getting some money out of this. And trust me, here's the thing about left-wing media. There ain't no money here. There's no money in the left, especially when it comes to criticizing the right wing. There's not a lot there. You can make tons of cash for slamming the left, especially if you're left-wing. There's a lot of money in going after Democrats for the sake of going after Democrats. And I'm not saying that you should never go after Democrats. I'm saying that you should go after Democrats when it's fair to do so. I think there's always plenty of room for criticism. People like Bernie Sanders and AOC, you can definitely criticize them, but there is definitely a lot of money in doing nonstop criticism of, the left, from the left. And so that said, this back to the story here. There's another former One America News Network person that talked to the New York Times. It's Marty Gulligan. He was a producer at OAN before he was fired for speaking candidly to the New York Times. He said that when OAN hired him, he expected to work for an organization that had a conservative slant. Well, again, nothing wrong with having a conservative opinion. There's nothing wrong with, having a conservative perspective. We'll just disagree. And that's part of the discourse. That's totally fine. And look, for part of the time, he was doing normal news rundowns as an OAN producer. The problem is when they started pushing more fringy stuff that, in his words, had, quote, weird sourcing. Interesting. Now, it was mostly, Gulligan said, coming from the top. And as I said, those are the H stories that they were pushing. Those are the stories that were only meant, of course, to enrage. Those were, all about trying to gather an audience through lying, essentially, and making as much money of scaring their audience as they can. By the way, that is by a lot of this stuff that comes from the right. For example, let's take QAnon, right? Who doesn't get outraged when you hear about children being hurt? Everybody. I mean, and in QAnon, you had kind of the perfect conspiracy, right? Kids getting hurt by the globalist elite. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's not a very popular person. I know. Even among Democrats, okay? Bill Gates, big media, right? Things that they're able to use to push out this narrative that there's this big conspiracy, okay? Going after these people and organizations, and then they'll tell their audience, well, you're special because you know the truth. And they're not just evil because of this and this. They're actually evil because they're part of the giant pedophile cabal. Okay, but here's the thing. Bill Gates is not Bill Gates has got issues, okay? I have issues with Bill Gates funding, for example, private education instead of public education and pushing for charter schools. Not only that, but refusing to share vaccine formulas with poor countries in order to end the pandemic. We should absolutely do that. So there's stuff that Bill Gates does that's ridiculous. But at the same time, no, I don't think he's drinking the adrenochrome of children. It seems pretty ridiculous. Hillary Clinton also not doing that. But however, she did take money from health insurance companies to not support Medicare for all. And so that's the problem that I have. All of this is a far cry from, hey, this is a typical rich, out of touch, selfish person. And it's a big difference from that to going to, well, they're also injecting adrenochrome from children that they've raped. That also want to kill 3/4 of the human race. Big difference there. Okay. But that's, again, the difference from good faith, progressive media versus bad faith, conservative media like OAN and InfoWars. So some of this stuff is completely unhinged. And the reason that it is because there is a market out there. And they tell people what they want to hear in order to get them to, feel justified in their hatred of certain people or a certain political party, and that they have to continue to invent crazier and crazier and crazier things to continue to justify that hatred. And these companies, these organizations, these people that are influencers, as I should say, or hosts, they get to make a buck. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.